Remember Barack Obama's speeches from January and February? Lofty oratory that had crowds in the tens of thousands, all melty, as the senator reeled off a decisive string of 11 whopping primary wins in a row. Then critics suggested he was all spine tingle and no spine. Obama's speeches became wonkier, smaller, less aspirational. Well, now Senator Obama's got 8 days to go until Election Day, and the soaring stuff is back. And it's working on those big crowds again. Today in Ohio, Obama unveiled a speech informally called The Closing Argument.
In 1 week, you can put an end to the politics that would divide a nation just to win an election, that tries to pit region against region and city against town, Republican against Democrat, that asks us to fear at a time when we need hope. The change we need isn't just about new programs and policies. It's about a new attitude. It's about new politics. A politics that calls on our better angels instead of encouraging our worst instincts. One that reminds us of the obligations we have to ourselves and one another. In 1 week, we can choose hope over fear and unity over division. The promise of change over the power of the status quo. In 1 week, we can come together as one nation and one people and once more choose our better history. That's what's at stake. That's what we're fighting for.
On Saturday, Barack Obama and John McCain both rallied on the same day in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Obama's rally turned out 45,000 people. McCain's rally, 1,400. McCain rallied 4,000 supporters in Denver on Friday. Yesterday, Obama came to the same town, and the crowd topped 100,000. But do monstrous crowds, even crowds 100,000 strong, translate to votes? Do they inaccurately suggest a runaway race when in reality it might be quite close? Obama doesn't appear to be taking any chances.
How many people have early voted? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. No point in waiting in lines if you don't have to. You know who you're going to vote for. Go to the polls.
A smart, specific play by the candidate there. But according to the Denver Post, quote, the rally drew a huge crowd, but after it broke up, few stopped at the Wellington Webb building where about 50 voting booths waited nearby. In Ohio, early this month, turnout was also surprisingly low for the week-long period in which Ohio residents could register to vote and immediately cast a ballot. Only about 3,000 voters in Ohio's 4 largest counties took advantage of that opportunity. And in the battleground states of Florida, Colorado, and Iowa, early voting numbers are still below 2004 early voting final statistics. Yes, we do still have another week to go, but is this the kind of complacency that Obama keeps warning about? Is the threat here not a stronger than he seems opponent, not a lack of Democratic enthusiasm, but rather evident excitement and enthusiasm that's not necessarily translating into votes? Joining us now to try to talk me down is Howard Dean, who, of course, is the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Governor Dean, many thanks for your time, sir.
Rachel, thanks for having me on.
I'm feeling like things are mostly good news for the Democratic Party generally right now, for Senator Obama specifically. But I am seeing some clouds in the silver linings, too, because I'm that kind of person. We had 100,000 people rally for Senator Obama in Colorado this weekend, but it did not translate at least immediately into a surge in early voting in Colorado this weekend. Is it possible that there is a risk that some of the demonstrated enthusiasm for Senator Obama may not translate into actual votes? How do you work on something like that?
Well, you just work like crazy, and we're all working like crazy right now. I'm going to be in North Dakota before this week is over, because we think we've got some opportunities there, and I'm going to be active in some Senate campaigns in New Hampshire and Minnesota and Oregon and so forth. We're all working as hard as we can to get every vote out. I will say, though, that I've just looked at the numbers, the early voting numbers from Colorado. They're very, very good.
On the issue of the mechanics of voting, it seems to me that it's not really articulated all that often, but there seems to be a Democratic strategy of not talking all that much about long lines at the polling places, about efforts to disenfranchise voters, about chaos at the voting polls, at the polls. Not to talk about it because of the risk of discouraging voters who might otherwise turn out if they think there's a chance their vote won't count, or that it's going to be difficult or going to take a long time to vote. The idea is that you might suppress turnout by talking about those things. Is that the strategic way of thinking about it? And and do you think that voters should be warned that it might be difficult to vote this year?
Well, I think there will be lines for sure. So that's why we're working so hard to encourage people to vote early, because why go and worry about standing in a snowstorm, or your professor just gave you an exam, or your boss told you how to work a double shift, or there's a long line? Why not just go and cast your vote early and have it be done? So we are pushing that very hard. Look, the truth of the matter is that we fixed a lot of the problems that started in 2000. We still have a way to go. We do need to outlaw those Diebold and black box voting machines, and we did in some states, but not in others, and that's something that Congress is going to have to address. They didn't do it the last time. But the fact is, things have gotten a lot better since 2000.
That said, some people who are turning out to vote early in Florida are facing 5-hour lines. That's not been unheard of in Florida, and it's my view, looking back at the legislative history about how early voting has been legislated in Florida, the reason that people are waiting 5 hours to vote in some parts of Florida is because the Republican-dominated legislature passed a bill which said we can't have things open for 12 hours. We can only have things open for 8 hours.
I agree. There are some states where this stuff has not yet been fixed. Florida took a step forward in getting rid of the black box voting machines, but there's a very strong right-wing majority in Florida that makes things tougher. But again, the people of Florida are responding. They want change. They are going out to vote. And they are standing in line when necessary. Some counties have lines, some don't.
I realize I'm pressing you on this, but it's because it's been sort of keeping me up at night. And I wonder if it's time for you or for Senator Obama or Senator Biden to issue essentially an inspirational call about difficulties in voting. I know that you don't want to discourage people from going out, but the fact is that there are going to be a lot of lines in places. And to be able to say, you know what, there may be lines, there may be people challenging you, there may be efforts to disenfranchise people in your precinct, but you owe it to your country as an American to do this, and don't be pushed around, and don't allow anybody to intimidate you out of voting.
We think Americans want to vote. The early numbers are extraordinary. People getting out to vote in huge numbers, and we think people already get that. We don't think we need to remind everybody how important this election is.
Governor Dean, one last question. Is there anything that's keeping you up at night these days in terms of what you're worried about heading into this final 8 days of the election?
Everything keeps me up at night. That's my job, especially in the last 8 days. But look, we've done everything we can. We've got a great candidate. We've prepared for this for 3.5 years. We've got a unified party. I can't help but thank President Clinton and Hillary Clinton for going out and working so hard for this ticket. We've got legions and legions of young people who really want change in America and have great idealism. This is about renewing America. This is a great country, and now we're about to have a leader, I hope, who's as great as the American people are. We need to restore America to its greatness, and I think we can do that by electing Barack Obama.
Former Vermont Governor Howard Dean, who, of course, is the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. I know you're very busy, Governor. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.